Horse racing on stamps. So as you know, I'm into philately. Closet philatelist. They can't stop you for it. And I collect stamps, a lot of stamps. So what I've done is I've put together, the stamps that we have on the Kentucky Derby. Next slide, please. So I've done a couple of presentations on stamps, and what you've got here is a thing called a first day cover. So this is a very special thing. Some collectors collect only these. I have a few, but it's not my primary part of my collection. But I wanted to show some first day covers for this presentation because, the nice thing about the cover is it's basically an envelope. You buy it, you put the stamp on it, and then the Postal Service stamps it with a special cancellation that says first day of issue. So you know exactly when it was issued. Generally, you address it to yourself. I've actually photoshopped out the addresses on these. This isn't, this is one I bought, obviously not one I had on the day. Which is nice. So here we actually have Kentucky Downs on the envelope, and you see the famous twin spires there. This was issued in 1974 by the Postal Service to commemorate the 100th running of the Kentucky Derby, and it was actually issued in Louisville. So every time there's a new issue, they issue it at a place that is specific to that to that event or whatever's being commemorated on the stamp. So if we move to the next slide, please, Lucky. There's a bit more detail. As you can see, it's just a very iconic, horses racing around. Just for information, the winner of the 1974 Kentucky Derby was Cannonade, who won by 2.5 lengths. Unfortunately, he went on to finish third in the Preakness and third in the Belmont. So no Triple Crown for him. So that's pretty much it for the Kentucky Derby, except for the next stamp. Next slide, please. This is the famous Secretariat. This was a stamp that was issued as part of a mini sheet called Celebrating the Century. And if you were in my last art talk, we talked about these Celebrating the Century things that came out in the 98, 99 period. And they celebrate, the various decades of the 20th century. So this is from the 1970s set. This is just one of the stamps on that sheet featuring Secretariat, and this is the first day of issue for this particular stamp. So it was issued in New York on the 18th of November 1999 and features on the envelope there Secretariat winning the Triple Crown. So Secretariat's one of those famous horses. If you're into horse racing, most people have heard of him. If you haven't seen the docudrama about him, it's worth watching. It's not totally factual, but most docudramas aren't. It's a little bit more dramatized than documentary, but it's still exciting if you're into horse racing. He is considered one of probably the greatest racehorse of all time. So he won the Kentucky Derby in 1973 by beating Sham by 2.5 lengths in a record time of 1 minute, 59 seconds and 2/5. And that is still a record. He then went on to beat Sham again in the Preakness by 2.5 lengths, setting the record for that track of 1 minute 53 flat, still a record. And then he won the Belmont to win the Triple Crown. This is one of those things you actually have to see. It's worth looking at it on YouTube. It's quite amazing. He came from almost back. Everybody thought he wasn't going to do it. And then he came around and won by 31 lengths.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Was he tested for performance enhancing oats?
Exactly. No, it was really quite an achievement. You really have to see it, and it's the record was 2 minutes and 24 seconds, which is still a record. So not only did he win the Triple Crown, he set records which still hold today. So that's the 9th winner of the Triple Crown, Secretariat.
Wow.
Sorry, Lucky, can you go to the next slide? We can just see a little bit of detail on that slide, on that stamp. Sorry. So that's quite a nice little stamp, actually. It's about 1 inch by 1 inch if you want to know how big it is. So, you know, when we try and cover sports on the stamp talk here, we generally find that there's not actually that many stamps issued by the US Postal Service specifically to that event. So I put together a few other slides here. Next slide, please. This is a set that came out in '85. It was actually released in Lexington, Kentucky, which is obviously, you know, right in the middle of horse country, racehorse country. This was a set of 4 horse breeds, all 22-cent stamps, and you could get them all in a little block. So here's the first day of issue from 25th of September 1985. And if we go to the next slide, Lucky, we can see a bit more detail on the stamps. There they go. So this features 4 famous horse breeds: the quarter horse, the Morgan, the saddlebred, and the Appaloosa. And this was the dedication ceremony for this was held at the Parade of Breeds barn at the Kentucky Horse Park. It's often called the showplace of the bluegrass. And it's a state-operated Kentucky horse park, features more than 30 different breeds and types of horses, mules, and donkeys, as well as many unique exhibits. So I think if you're ever in the area, that would be a place, and you like horses, that would be a place worth visiting. Let's go to the next slide. This is one from '93. This is the sporting horses issue. Again, this was May the 1st, 1993. This was issued at Churchill Downs, and it was in conjunction with the 119th Kentucky Derby, which was actually won by Sea Hero. And this features, next slide, we can see a bit more detail. Again, it's a block of 4 29-cent stamps, and this features polo, steeplechase, harness, and track racing. So let's see, let's go to the next slide. So this is, I kind of moved outside the US because I thought, well, what other famous horse races do we have? And Sarah had one up from the Epsom Derby, not Derby. Like, you know, I joked with somebody the other day, English place names are changed to confuse American tourists. So we have in the UK, we have the Derby, not the Derby. And it's been running for a long time. This one was issued in 1979 for the 200th anniversary of the Derby at Epsom, which is in Surrey. First run in Epsom Downs in Surrey in 1780. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see here we're actually crossing over between, you know, Art Talk and Stamp Talk. And what they featured for this set was basically, you know, 4 different pieces of art. We have on the 9-pence stamp, we have Saddling Mahmood for the Derby in 1936 by Sir Alfred Munnings. On the 10.5-pence stamp, the Liverpool Great National Steeplechase, which we all know as you know, the Grand National, in 1839. That was an aquatint by F.C. Turner. On the 11-pence, we have the first spring meeting at Newmarket in 1793 by J.N. Sartorius. And then the 13-pence stamp is Racing at Dorset Ferry, Windsor in 1864 by Francis Barlow. So yeah, some nice little pieces of art there. Moving away from the UK, and this is the last one I want to put up, almost. And this is another famous horse race, which is the Melbourne Cup. This has been running for 150 years. This was actually in 2010, so it's now 160 years. This isn't a first day cover. This is actually a souvenir sheet or a mini sheet, which is a common thing that you know, postal administrations will put out, mainly for collectors, to be honest. And so you have all of the values of the stamps, and there's 4 stamps here, one featuring obviously the Melbourne Cup. The background is the Flemington Racecourse, just outside Melbourne, which is, you know, Melbourne, Victoria. This race is held on the first Tuesday of November, and it's locally known as the race that stops the nation. So yeah, there we go. If we go to the next slide, Lucky, we can see some details here. There we go. So on these are 3 60 Australian cent stamps. On the left-hand side, we have from 1890, which was actually the largest ever field with 39 runners. I can't imagine.
Wow.
Won by Carbine, who set a weight carrying a record 145 pounds. That's a big jockey. And it was actually 53 pounds more than the second placed horse. So yeah, it's amazing that he won with that very heavy jockey on. The middle stamp is a very famous horse called Far Lap. He won the Melbourne Cup in 1930. He's the only favourite to win odds on at 8 to 11. So you didn't get much money from him. And then on the last one here is the 60-cent stamp for Saintly, who won the Melbourne Cup in 1996. And of course, with his name, he was nicknamed the Horse from Heaven. All right, so one last stamp that I want to show you. And this is, I was trying to find, well, what was the first ever stamp that featured a horse race? And coincidentally, I actually have this one. I think this is the earliest. It may not be, and I'd love to be proven wrong on this, but I think this is the first one. This is celebrating or commemorating the Brown Ribbon of Germany. Das Braune Band von Deutschland. And this was issued in 1936. The actual race course was an annual July horse race run at the Riem race course in Munich from 1934 to 1944. And this was a surtaxed stamp. So it says 42 pfennigs, actually Reich pfennigs. But there was actually a surtax you had to pay of 108, which I think went to some sort of charity, I imagine. I couldn't find out which. They're really amazing pieces of artwork. They're not very big stamps, but this is quite an enlarged version of it. These obviously issued by the Third Reich, which is why they kind of stopped in 1944. So there's a whole series of these, and they're really quite nice.
Wow.